Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 23 playthrough of the Colorado Rockies. We have just passed the trade deadline. It is August 1st, 2052. The Rockies had an incredible 22-5 record in the month of July, which allowed us to turn a 2-game lead over the Padres in the NL West to a 10-game lead in the course of that month. So everything is going really well for the Rockies right now, and we are actually also at a point where we don't have any major league players who are injured. So we have the best record in baseball, and two real goals for the rest of the regular season are to hang on to that best record in baseball, which we at this point have by 3.5 games over the Braves, and that was also another dramatic transition over the course of the month of July, because the Braves were 7 games up on us for the best record in baseball when the month of July began. So that 22-5 record really turned things around for us in the division, and also turned things around for us in the race for home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So goal number 1 is to hang on to the best record in baseball. And goal number 2, and this is probably going to be the harder one to achieve since it's so random, is to head into the playoffs with a healthy team. We did make one big move at the trade deadline. We picked up starting pitcher Jose Vasquez. Actually, that's not who we picked up. We picked up starting pitcher Jose Ortega. We've got so many new pitchers coming onto our team that I'm having trouble keeping track of who's who. But we traded for Vasquez this past offseason. You can see he's 10-5 with a 4.37 ERA for us this year. We added the right-hander Jose Ortega a couple of days ago. Was not a cheap trade for us. We had to give up the player who had been our starting center fielder basically since we took over the Rockies in this playthrough, Tony Padilla, who has been a good to excellent offensive player for us. Good most of his years with us. Excellent back in 2050 when he was named an All-Star and hit .316 with 33 homers, 32 doubles, over 80 runs scored, over 80 runs driven in, and a 163 OPS plus, 156 WRC plus, and a 6.3 WAR. And he also is a very good defensive center fielder, but he's wrecked physically, and we've kind of moved on from him in a bit while he was injured this past season to allow Danny Ruiz, who we had brought on as a super utility guy a few years ago, to basically become our starting center fielder. So to pick up Ortega, we had to give away Padilla, but given that he's wrecked and he's in his arbitration years now and expected to make about $10 million next year, we thought that made some sense. And then we also had to give away Victor Duque, who's one of the better pitching prospects in our system, a left-hander. You can see in AAA Albuquerque this year, he's been lights out with a 1.25 ERA and 36 innings pitched. Feel like he's probably best used in the majors as a setup lefty man, or a lefty setup man. Better than a closer in the majors. I don't think he's got quite the stuff to be a really good closer in the majors. So I think that bullpen role for him in the majors is right, and it looks like they have brought him right up to the big club in Milwaukee. Like his personality, just think he's more of a generic bullpen arm, a good bullpen arm, but still, I don't want to say dime a dozen, but I think you can find players like him pretty frequently. And given that he didn't have the ground ball tendencies or the ground ball or pitcher type or the exceptional movement that we've been building our pitching staff in Colorado around, I felt like it was okay to give him up as well. And then we had to add in Jordan Ventura, a veteran with 11 years of major league experience that we picked up as a minor league free agent about 1.5 years ago. We're happy to throw him in to get them to take on more of Ortega's contract before sending him to us. So that was the big move, and I think it puts us in a great position as far as our pitching staff. We've got Loera, Alvarado, Vasquez, Ortega, and Toledo now in the rotation. 3 lefties, 2 righties. Juan Vargas, another lefty, was in the rotation most of this year. 22-game winner for us just 2 years ago. Getting a little older, think he'll be an incredibly effective lefty arm out of the bullpen now, but really an injury replacement in the rotation for us, likely going forward. And then Will Lucio, who's got a 2.33 ERA this year, has been even better than that. We did use him in the rotation for 4 starts after we demoted Vargas about a month ago. Lucio was 4-0 during the month with 3 earned runs allowed in those 4 starts, 1 National League Pitcher of the Month. But with bringing Ortega on board, ended up pushing Lucio back into the bullpen, which is a tough break for him, but do feel like we have a real high-quality starting rotation at this point, and with the likes of Vargas and Lucio, and even potentially, if we needed, Chase Crawford, who started for us a couple years ago, Ethan Mingo, who started in the past, feel like we've got a ton of options if we do need some pitchers. I think the most critical thing with our pitching staff, obviously we want our top 4 guys to all stay healthy, because I think with Loera, Alvarado, Vasquez, and Ortega, 2 lefties, 2 righties, pretty solid rotation. If we do have injuries, though, we've got depth. The one thing we don't want to happen is an injury to Rogelio Loera, our $40 million man, the veteran who's about to turn 40 years old. We brought on this year, one of the top pitchers in baseball history. Heck of a lot of hardware that he's won over the course of his career, as you can see. And he's 12-5 for us this year and already has over 200 strikeouts, even though it's only August 1st. Has a 6 WAR, a 1.79 SIERA. He has been brilliant for us and certainly is the ace of our rotation. He's the one guy that we really can't afford to lose. You know, if we were to lose one of our 2nd, 3rd, or 4th starters and have to replace them with Javi Toledo for the playoffs, not going to be optimal, but something that we can survive, I think, much more effectively than losing Loera. So that is really the only player that I think would be potentially crippling if we lost as far as the pitching staff. Looking at the everyday players at this point, Robbie Carrillo and Elijah Moore are the 2 biggest bats, but we are getting good production from 3rd baseman Alex Ortega, hitting .272 with 20 homers. The young first baseman Adam Fields hitting .285 with 21 homers. And then Danny Ruiz should continue to hopefully generate more offense now that he's our everyday center fielder and not wondering where he's going to be in the lineup every day. Bobby Perez has had some injury issues this year after winning NL Rookie of the Year last year. Still hitting .263 with 13 homers and 266 at-bats, though. So feel like the offense, even with the recent departure of Padilla, should be pretty productive. So, as I mentioned, the goals over the rest of the season are to stay healthy and to hold on to the best record in baseball. But before we find out whether we can achieve our goals over the final 48 games of the season, just wanted to check in on our minor league system. Still ranked 1st overall, so that's a pretty big improvement. We took over less than 4 years ago with a middling, I believe, 18th ranked farm system. So I've definitely been able to make some progress there. Elijah Smith is a guy who we picked number 3 overall 2 years ago when we did shockingly well in the draft lottery after our first season and fortunately our only losing season in Colorado. Recently moved him up from high A ball, where he was really good, 5-2, 375, to double A, where he's definitely struggled a bit, 1-4 record, 5.40 ERA. Only 21 years old, so I think the lefty, when you look at where his ratings are, according to our scout, still developing and on his way to, I think, being a pretty effective major league pitcher. He's viewed as the number 9 prospect in baseball right now, but certainly would expect that he'll spend the rest of this year with Double A. The big question is whether we'll promote him to Triple A next year or have him start out in Double A again. Alex Ramirez is viewed as the 12th best prospect in baseball. He was actually a scouting discovery before we took over the team. Promoted him to A ball this year, even though he hadn't been incredibly productive in rookie ball, but just felt that at 21 years old, it was time to start testing him a little more and seeing if maybe he could develop better in A ball than he has in rookie ball. He's hitting just 216 this year in 245 at bats. Still certainly profiles as a pretty interesting player with that above average home run power and eye if he does completely develop. He does have a good work ethic, so the hope is that he will develop. But doesn't seem like he's coming along as quickly as I would hope. Cameron Miller is a guy who was the first round pick of the team in 2038. He also is in Double-A this year. 2-6 record with a 4.84 ERA. So somewhat similar to Mr. Smith, is not tearing it up in Double-A, but is still viewed as one of the better prospects in our system and one of the better prospects in baseball. Yoel Bueno was our first international free agent signing here with the Rockies, number 39 prospect in baseball. Another guy that we promoted to A-ball this year who isn't doing very much, hitting 217 and 314 at-bats. But he did hit 312 last year when we promoted him from the from the international complex to rookie ball. So I think he's kind of at the level that he needs to be. I don't think he needs any more seasoning in rookie ball. He is only 19 years old, so Class A ball is definitely a good jump for him. But he was so productive in rookie ball, I just didn't see any point in keeping him down there. Hopefully that home run power will continue to develop over the next couple years. Roger Gonzalez, another international free agent signing of ours a year ago. The first baseman, only 17 years old, still at the international complex. Ivan Lopez is a third baseman, international free agent signing in 2048. He hasn't gotten out of rookie ball, and he's about to turn 21 years old, hitting just 242 there this year. But I think he's probably a pretty similar profile to a couple of the other guys we talked about in terms of Ramirez and Bueno, where I think it probably makes sense to just move him up to Class A. He hasn't been incredibly productive in rookie ball, but maybe he's not getting the coaching that he needs there for whatever reason. And at almost 21 years old, we'll give him a early birthday present, and we will move him up to Class A Fresno, see what he can do for us there. The last two guys to talk about are interesting ones. Melvin Armenta, you may remember, was our number one pick, 29th overall a year ago. Hit 189 in rookie ball last year, hitting just 222 down there this year, and he only turned 19 a couple months ago, so going to continue to play him in rookie ball. Angel Gomez is a guy who kind of fell into our lap. We signed him as a minor league free agent last Christmas and kind of just took a flyer on him. And you can see that, at least according to our scout, his ratings are almost major league quality at this point. He hit a awesome 366 when we started him in high A ball as a 23-year-old this year. Moved him up to Double-A last month where he hit 274 and 84 at-bats, and recently promoted him to the PCL and Triple-A. Had not mentioned him in the past, but his just meteoric rise through the organization. And again, we didn't, he was a free agent from Cuba. We ended up making a minor league offer to him right at the start of international free agency, and apparently he didn't get any other offers, so a month later he signed with us for our minor league system. We thought we might need to do more than that, but apparently nobody else was interested, and it's worked out well for us. Having him making that rise through the system is another thing that made me feel a little better about potentially getting rid of Padilla, because honestly, if you look at Gomez ratings, he could be a major league player at this point. And I think it's conceivable, if he plays well in AAA over the next month, that he could be one of our September call-ups. Knowing that we had this bat in the system that just kind of magically came out of nowhere for us less than a year ago made me feel a little better, as I said, about moving on from Padilla. Not that Gomez is anywhere near the defensive player that Padilla is in the outfield, but do feel that he does give us another quality bat if we need a little more offense from the outfield, either later this year or more likely next season. And with that quick review of some of our top minor league prospects done, we will get the baseball back underway. Taking a look at our schedule for this month of August. Got a lot of NL East games to start with the Phillies and the Marlins. Then some intra-league play with Cleveland and the Twins before getting back into the NL West with the Dodgers, the Padres, the Giants, and then a second series with the Padres as the month comes to a close. So hopefully we'll still have a lead of around 10 games by the time we get into those games against our NL West foes towards the end of the month. And the Rockies have been playing pretty well here in the early stages of August. We took a series 2-1 against Philly. Then we took a series 2-1 at Miami. And we are now up 2-0 in a 4-game series at home against the Phillies. So the play on the field continues to be very good. Looking at the standings, 10.5 up on the Dodgers, 13 on the Padres, who look to be fading a bit. And we are now up, looks 5.5 on the Braves for the best record in baseball. So things are going really well. Did suffer an injury, though. Hopefully not one that's going to impact us for the playoffs. But starting third baseman Alex Ortega, talked about him earlier, having a nice year, 266, 20 home runs already. Going to be out for 5 weeks with a strained oblique. So hopefully we'll have him back for the last few games of the regular season. He can get his timing back, hopefully. He's a player who's making the major league minimum for us. That number is likely to jump to about $5 million next year. Not a perfect offensive player. It's really all about the home run power with him. Although over the course of his career, he has hit 264. Been a positive OPS plus and WRC plus player generally over the course of his career until this season. Not perfect defensively. The range is borderline for a third baseman. The error rating and the arm are both, exactly what you're looking for in terms of a third baseman. Turn double play rating is not optimal, but certainly not a bad defensive third baseman and not a bad bat with that home run power. But as he starts making more money, certainly a player that we may need to think about other options at third base, and we'll get a chance to think about those options over the next month and a half, because obviously he is going to be going onto the injured list, and we're going to be bringing up someone from the minors and shifting the lineup around a bit to ensure that we've got some professional glove and bat work coming from third base, hopefully. And we brought former Rule 5 pick Jose Brito back from AAA Albuquerque. He's been up and down a few times this year in his last option year. You can see he's been optioned 3 times at this point. Hitting .353 in Albuquerque and hitting .321 in limited action in the majors for us. So good to have him back. Not ideal defensively for a third baseman, but certainly a good personality in the clubhouse for the soon-to-be 30-year-old. And we are going to be giving Brito time at third base against left-handed pitchers. And then Tony Caceres, who we brought on as a utility infielder, kind of a somewhat rare lefty batting infielder outside of first base. He's going to be playing third base for us against right-handers. He has not been great this year, hitting just .219 and 106 at-bats. But he is potentially a little better defensively at the position than Brito is, even though his arm not ideal for a third baseman. So a little weak at the position right now, probably going to hurt our defense a bit, and certainly will hurt our offense a bit with Caceres and Brito getting the playing time rather than Ortega. But as I said, if this is the biggest injury that happens to us over the course of these the last month and a half of the season or so, no harm, no foul, because I think we will have Ortega back just in time for the playoffs. And we've simmed ahead to August 19th, and all those series against the NL West clubs are coming up now. And it's been a rough stretch for the Rockies. 5-game losing streak, actually. We had talked about we won the first 2 against Philly. They then took the last 2 of the series against us. Cleveland swept us in a 2-game series, and the Twins took the first of a 3-game series before we did bounce back with 2 consecutive wins. But that 5-game losing streak in the middle of the month has allowed the division to tighten up a little bit. Only up 5.5 on the Dodgers right now, who have won 9 in a row. So this 3-game series on the road in Los Angeles is going to be critical. Certainly hope that we take 2 out of 3, expand the lead back to 6.5. But the Dodgers are the hottest team in baseball right now as we get ready to face off against them at home. Still are up at this point 6 games on the Braves for the best record in baseball. Actually, that's not true because the White Sox have passed them now, and the Dodgers are actually also half a game better than the Braves at this point. But the White Sox at 79 and 50 are only 2 games behind us for the best record in baseball. They outside of the Dodgers with the 9-game winning streak, the 6-game winning streak that the White Sox have right now is the second best in baseball. So things are tightening up on us a little bit here in the month of August. As we talked about at the start of the episode, we've now got the rest of the month with teams in our division, and certainly this 3-game series at the Dodgers is going to be critical in terms of ensuring that we're not feeling a ton of pressure as the calendar turns to September, and we can really focus more on trying to keep the team healthy and get ready for the playoffs. And it ended up being a pretty good week for the Rockies. You can see Robbie Carrillo, Player of the Week award, .364 with 4 homers and 9 ribbies. And he helped contribute to us taking the series against the Dodgers 2 games out of 3, and then taking the series against the Padres 2 games out of 3. So we've now got the Giants and the Padres before the month finishes up, but certainly winning 2 out of 3 against both of the teams that are chasing us in the standings definitely helps. 7.5 up on the Dodgers now, 10 up on the Padres. The White Sox remain red hot. Looks like they dropped 1 game and then have since won 4 in a row. They're 84 and 51, so they're only a game behind us for the best record in baseball right now. But we are up 7.5, it looks like, on the Dodgers, and same amount on the Rockies, or 7 on the Braves, it looks like. So feeling pretty comfortable that we will have the best record in the National League. But certainly the White Sox, with their great play of late, are putting a bit of pressure on us as far as the best record in baseball from a bit of an unexpected source. Robbie Carrillo and Elijah Moore at this point are both in a battle with Oscar Montero for the batting title. Elijah Moore, ahead of his free agent season, 42 home runs, leading the league. Still looking for around $40 million a year, so that number hasn't changed at all. We did talk about in our last episode that moving on from Padilla and the potential to be paying him $10 million next year in arbitration also hopefully keeps us in the mix to potentially bring on Elijah Moore, bring him back next year. But it's certainly going to be expensive, and we're going to have some tough decisions to make to free up the money to bring him back if we don't get a nice boost in our team budget next year, which hopefully a long run in the playoffs will help get us that. And then Elijah Moore is also running away with the league lead in ribbies. So he's in a battle with a teammate for the batting title as well as Montero. Looks like he's in a pretty good battle with William Gomez and our former first baseman Jamel Cohen for home runs. But on August 26th, Elijah Moore certainly has a chance at a triple crown, leading the league in OPS. Not surprisingly, Carrillo is third. Moore is third in batter war. Also has an active 25-game hitting streak at this point. Turn into some of the pitcher standings. Rogelio Loera, second in the league with 15 wins, leading the league with 243 strikeouts. And easily leading the league in pitcher WAR. So 15-6 with a 3.46 ERA and 243 strikeouts in 156 innings while pitching half of his games in Colorado. Certainly feel like we've gotten our money's worth out of Rogelio Loera thus far. And the final days of August continued to go well for the Rockies. Won a third consecutive series, 2-1 against a divisional foe at home against San Francisco. And now we're definitely going to win the series at home against San Diego. We took the first two, have the final game of the series today. So although that 5-game losing streak in the middle of the month was not ideal, we've definitely bounced back from that, taking 5 consecutive series at this point, even after losing the first game of that series to Minnesota for our 5th consecutive loss. Taking a look at the standings, up 8.5 on the Dodgers at this point and 12 on the Padres. The Braves still the closest to us in the National League, and it looks like we are 8 up on them. And the White Sox have fell back a little bit. Looks like we're 3.5 up on them for the best record in baseball as we get into the final weeks of the season here on September 1st. Elijah Moore, I think the price for him keeps going up, and it's a price we may have to pay. 307, 43 homers, and 130 ribbies on the year now. Won the Batter of the Month award, hitting 324 with 11 home runs. Hitting with great urgency in an effort to bolster his asking price in the Colorado clubhouse and around the rest of the league. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Although he's kept it at that 39,760 for a while now, I think that's probably the peak for him. We've only got $27 million available for extensions right now, so obviously we're going to have to do some maneuvering when we get to the end of the regular season to be able to keep him on board. But right now, we're focused on trying to stay healthy and keep this juggernaut running along. We were 16-10, so 3rd straight month with a winning percentage over 600 in the month of August. Still ranked 1st in the National League in runs scored, and we've improved to 4th in runs allowed. I think we were 6th in runs allowed the last time I checked in, maybe a month and a half ago, and felt like that was about as good as it could possibly get for a team pitching half of its games in Coors. But apparently I underestimated our pitching staff. So the season is going really well at this point. Checking in on the injured list, Ortega out for another 1 to 2 weeks. We've got another 3.5 weeks in the season. So think that he should be back and healthy and hopefully completely ready to go. We've got 140 games in the books now, so 22 games left to play over these last 3.5 weeks. And the goal is obviously to hold on to the best record in baseball and to remain healthy. Our magic number's down to 15, so we will have a chance where we can potentially be judicious with the use of our players, particularly our pitchers, over the final weeks of the season. Right now, the only big decisions before we continue simming ahead are adding 2 players to our roster, because we finally made it to September roster expansion, given that we've been running with 13 pitchers since we added on Mr. Ortega, who, as you can see, is 4-1 for us with a 2.27 ERA. So he's really continued doing what Will Lucio had been doing for us over the month of July. We didn't want to send Lucio, who was our only player with options, back to the minors. So we did kind of flip things and run with 13 pitchers and 13 position players for the month of August. So now we are most likely going to be looking to add a couple of position players to the roster. Don't feel like we really need much help at all with the pitching staff at this point. And Angel Gomez, who we talked about not that long ago, we've been playing him a little bit at center field in AAA to just improve his defensive versatility. He has hit only .202 there. I think the batting profile indicates he could probably hold his own at the major league level, but if he had been hitting 260, 270, it would be a pretty easy decision to promote him. We'll take a little bit of a deeper look through what we have in AAA right now before making that decision. And as we looked at our team in AAA, we're able to make some final decisions on who to bring up. We did end up bringing up Angel Gomez. He's 23 years old, and although he hasn't hit all that much in AAA, based on his batting ratings, he's certainly acceptable as a backup outfielder in the majors at this point. Gives us a switch hitter coming off of the bench to hopefully get some at-bats for us. And then we also brought up Tony Piggy, who is a minor league free agent signing from back in January, was a guy who was looking for a job, 32-year-old almost, who's a major league veteran at this point. Was basically just looking for a job. The market didn't develop the way he had hoped, so we've had him down in AAA all year. He is an excellent glove, definition of a no-hit but great glove shortstop. Feel like he gives us a little more defensive versatility if we have to sub out for Casares at short. Gives us a better defensive option than we have with Terrazas as a backup for him. So think that both of those moves will hopefully help us on the margins over these last 3.5 weeks of the season. And one last thing to mention before we play those last 3.5 weeks of the season, our fan interest continues to decay a little bit, which, given how well the team has been playing in July and August, seems a little bit unrealistic to me. The team has got the best record in baseball. Fans are coming out to the park pretty consistently. This is one of my little pet peeves and something that I hope will be fixed with the potential improvements that the folks at OOTP Development are touting in OOTP 24. Think that they've talked about improvements to the AI and also improvements to the financial system. And I hope a little more realism around this fan interest number is something that may be programmed into the new game for the upcoming season. And we did win that first game in September to end up sweeping the Padres. So they are definitely falling back 13 games out now, although they're still up 3.5 for a wild card. Our division is loaded with the Rockies, Dodgers, and Padres, all potentially going to be playoff teams this year. Up 9.5 on the Dodgers now after they lost. We will potentially be facing off against the Dodgers in our final 3 games of the year. Hoping that those games aren't going to mean anything to us at that point. Hopefully we'll already have the NL West and the best record in baseball clinched by that point, but there's certainly no guarantees. Taking a look at the standings, Elijah Moore has extended that hitting streak to 31 games, still leading the league in homers and ribbies, but he's off of the board as far as the leaders in batting average despite that batting streak. His .306 average presumably is 4th in the National League, so still chasing teammate Robbie Carrillo, but certainly chasing a potential triple crown at the age of 28 right before you hit free agency is about as good as it gets, and we saw that happen in real life just this past year with Aaron Judge, a little older than 28, but was chasing that triple crown up until the final days of the season when it became clear he wasn't going to have a real shot at winning the batting title. At this point, Elijah Moore is close enough that a couple of 3 for 4 or 2 for 5 kind of days can push him in the direction of competing with Carrillo, Montero, and Caceres for the NL batting crown. And another respectable week in the books for our Rockies. Split a 2-game series at Oakland, but then won 4-game series at San Francisco, taking 3 out of 4 after being shut out 1-0 in the first game of that series. Some incredible pitching on the road from the Rockies. Allowed 1 run in that first game. shutout in the second, 1 run in the third, 1 run in the fourth game. And honestly, we allowed 2 runs in both games against Oakland and only 1 run against the Padres. So although we've only played 1 game at home so far in this month of September, the most runs we've allowed in a single game is 2. So the investment in the pitching staff definitely seems to be paying off at this point. We have clinched a playoff spot, have not clinched the division yet, magic number down to 6. So even though we are 3 games up on the White Sox for the best record in baseball, they have already clinched the division since there are no other winning teams in the AL Central at this point. And we still have the Dodgers and Padres, who both look pretty certain to be playoff teams in our division. So things are going well. Moore's hitting streak was snapped at 33 games, continues to run away with the league lead in ribbies in a good battle for home runs, and 306 batting average is now 13 points behind Oscar Montero of the Mets. So probably going to need a real big week from Elijah Moore with a lot of 2 and 3 hit games and maybe even a 4-hit game thrown in there for him to start making up some ground in his pursuit of a triple crown. And as we begin this week, the injury situation is still fine. Ortega looks like he's got 3 days till he'll be back from that strained oblique, so we may send him for a game or 2 in AAA, if AAA is even still playing at this point. I think they would be on September 9th, but we'll make sure that their season is still going, and if it is, maybe give him a day or 2 there to shake off the rust before we bring him up for the last week and a half of the season. And we did lose the first 2 games of the series to St. Louis, so with only 1 game left, we're definitely going to drop a series for the first time in, I think, closing in on 3 weeks. We've got the Diamondbacks after that. Then it's kind of interesting. We'll be playing the White Sox the last weekend of the regular season. Kind of weird to have an intra-league game that could settle the best record in baseball in late September, but those are the vagaries of the schedule at this point. With those 2 losses in a row, still have a 10-game lead on the Dodgers, 13 on the Padres, magic number down to 4, and we're only up 2 on the White Sox, so kind of interesting that best record in baseball and home field advantage throughout the playoffs could be decided in a intra-league battle in the final week of the season. Looks like the AAA season is still going hard, so we are going to send Ortega down there just for a couple days on a rehab assignment and then decide who to demote when we do bring him back up. Other than that, it's just a matter of hoping that the pitching remains healthy, and in an effort to do that, I'm going to go extremely conservative here. We have would be easier to add up the number of games. We got 13 games left at this point, and I am actually going to go to a 6-man starting rotation for these last 13 games just to minimize the stress on our pitchers as much as possible. With 13 players at the major league level, I think we'll be fine doing that. It'll also give us an opportunity to give Will Lucio a couple more starts, which I think he certainly earned with the great 4 games that he pitched for us back in the month of July as a starter. Still have 7 arms in the bullpen, and we still have another off day coming up. So I think that just a way to ensure that the amount of stress on our starters' arms is as minimal as possible while still getting them some work over these last couple days of the season, or last couple weeks of the season. And we did end up getting swept by the Cardinals before we turned things around and swept Arizona on the road. So now the schedule really breaks in our favor for these final 9 games of the season, all of them at home against the Padres, and then the White Sox, and then the Dodgers. Taking a look at the standings, up 10 on the Dodgers, so we have clinched the NL West at this point. only up one game on the White Sox for the or for the best record in baseball. So, although at this point we are up 5.5 on the Braves for the best record in the National League, feel pretty good that we're going to have that clinched in relatively short order. I guess there is conceivably a scenario where if we end up facing the White Sox in the World Series, that they would have home field advantage for us. Honestly, at this point, if you're going to guarantee to me that we get into the World Series, I would take that at this point, even though it would mean that we'd only have potentially 3 games at home. Elijah Moore still running away with ribbies, has extended his lead in home runs, 9 points back in the batting race to Carrillo and Montero. So going to be interesting to see whether he can hold on to the lead in home runs and ribbies, which I think he probably will, and make a big push to potentially win a Triple Crown right before free agency. And Alex Ortega did hit well in that rehab assignment, 308 and 13 at-bats over 3 games. So we're going to bring him back to the Major League roster. I think we will send Piggy down. Looks like he's only played 2 games, 7 at-bats. We're going to demote him back to AAA. Oh, he refuses to be demoted. Well, let's see what Gomez has done. He's only got 9 at-bats, only hit 111. I guess there is a scenario where if Casares gets hurt, Piggy would become, with his excellent defense, likely our starting shortstop. So honestly, we're going to send Gomez down to AAA for the rest of the year to make room for Ortega back in the starting lineup. And things going well so far. We took 2 out of 3 against San Diego, and we won the first 2 games at home against the White Sox. Particularly this game on Friday was really interesting. Loera went out and closed out his regular season in fine fashion. 1 hit and 11 strikeouts over 6 2/3 innings. Lowered his ERA to 3.13. Going to finish the year at 18-6 with 289 strikeouts. We could potentially get another start out of him the last day of the season, but we are going to take the fact that he's going to be healthy and well for the playoffs as a big win. So we are actually going to, just in the case of being as conservative as possible, since I think his time would be up for that last game of the season, which will be the 25th. Actually, that would only be if we had a 5-man rotation. That would be him. So the fact that we've moved to a 6-man rotation probably makes us safe, but do not want to risk anything. So we are just going to bench him for the next 6 games to ensure that Mr. Loera will be healthy and well for the playoffs. So taking a look at the standings here as we get into these final days of the season, we are up 2 now on the White Sox for the best record in baseball. So we could all but clinch if we take this final game of the series against them today. We've obviously won the division, and with 4 games left and the Braves being 7 games behind us, we've clinched the best record in the National League at this point. So hopefully we can stay healthy over these last 4 games of the year. And if we win against Chicago today, basically they're going to need to win out, and we're going to need to lose out to end up in a tie with them. And I guess with 4 games left, also makes sense to check in on some of the league leaders. Loera is going to make a pretty strong case for another Cy Young award. He's going to, well, right now he's tied for the league lead in wins. I guess he could get passed by Smith if Smith pitches another game. Obviously going to lead the league with 289 strikeouts. Obviously going to lead the league with 8.6 pitcher WAR, and that 3.13 ERA is certainly respectable. Kind of funny to see Cameron Campbell, who you remember was a guy we had thought about drafting out of Duke 3 years ago. We went in a different direction with, I believe it was the 13th pick in the draft, somewhere in that area. And it wasn't a good direction for us because Cameron Campbell Looks like he is having a great year, 16-7 with a 2.19 ERA, 161 strikeouts for the Brewers as a 24, soon to be 25-year-old. So he has done really well. Speaking of doing really well, with 4 games left, would think that Elijah Moore, with a 5 home run lead and a 14 running RBI lead in those races in the NL, has clinched leading the league in homers and ribbies almost. His batting average, though, has dipped to 301 at this point, so he's going to have to pass several players and make up 11 points in the batting race over the final 4 games of the season. And it's certainly conceivable, if he's not just a couple of percentage points behind or I guess a couple of basis points behind more accurately, when we get to the final game or 2 of the season, maybe time to start resting players like Moore and Carrillo those final 2 games, just so we don't get any real bad surprises as we prepare for the playoffs. And we did win the final game against the Cubs, so that probably has all but clinched the best record in baseball for us. I'm assuming that the tiebreaker would be head-to-head, and given that we just took 3 in a row from them, it's hard to imagine that we didn't win the season series against a team in the other league. I guess we could clearly go and check on that. And our Colorado Rockies, 3-0 against the White Sox. That was our only series. So I think that means that we've clinched the best record in baseball at this point, because if we end up tied at 102, which would mean that we would lose 3 in a row and they would win 3 in a row, we still took the season series against them. I don't know what else the tiebreaker could possibly be. One little slightly negative piece of injury news as we try to not have anything happen to us. Latrell Young, the lefty reliever, moderate impact on his running, minimal impact on throwing and hitting from a strained back. I'm going to need to recover for the next week. So we're going to make sure that he is also benched for the rest of the regular season. Hopefully he will be ready for the playoffs, given the fact that we do now have Juan Vargas in the bullpen, although his ERA is inflated because of his very poor performance as a starter earlier in the year. We could live without Latrell Young, certainly, but would prefer that everyone be healthy and well by the time we get to pick out a playoff roster. And quite honestly, since we're going to have a first-round bye, there should be plenty of time for him to be healthy, since we're likely not going to be playing till the first couple days in October, I would guess. One final thing, our attendance per game, just over 48,000. So that would actually meet that owner goal for 2,054 if we can get there. I am going to get a little greedy since we've been selling out, and since we know we're going to have a bunch of home playoff games. Would prefer to make a little more money in those home playoff games, and maybe a little more if we keep selling out here the last 3 games of the regular season. So bumping up ticket prices another notch to $34 to hopefully just generate a little more revenue. Our owner is more concerned with winning than revenue, and we certainly are also, given that we are all in on trying to win this season. But if we can deliver him a better financial performance too, there's no reason not to attempt to do that. And Adam Fields just won the NL Player of the Week. Former Rule 5 pick of ours, hit .526 with a couple home runs. You can see for the season, 300 batting average, 29 homers, 105 ribbies. He has been a great acquisition for us to take over at first base with the departure of Jamel Cohen, who has also had a really good year the last time I checked in on him. With the Braves, who we could certainly be facing in the playoffs. 320 average with 41 home runs and just 406 at-bats. So I don't know whether he was hurt or they're just playing him against right-handed pitchers. Looks like he did... looks like they're probably in a platoon situation with him because he's missed 4 days a couple times this year. But actually one of them was in the preseason also. So he's been pretty healthy all year. It looks like they've turned him into a platoon first baseman slash DH, only playing against righties. And he's been extremely productive in that. But we had a team option on him for 18. He ended up signing for 19.4. So we could have had him for a little less than that. But we felt that having Adam Fields for $700,000 was the move that ultimately allowed us to afford the salary to bring on Rogelio Loera. And given the fantastic season he has had for us, and the fact that Mr. Fields has been very, very good for us, I think that move has ultimately paid off. And we just beat the Dodgers in the first game of that series, so now there's no possible way that we won't have the best record in baseball at 103-57. Robbie Carrillo hitting 312, and Elijah Moore, the batting average is at 302. I'm just going to do the math on whether, with 2 games left, there's any scenario whether Elijah Moore can get by Robbie Carrillo to win the batting title before potentially sitting him down, since there's no question that he'll end up leading the league in home runs and RBIs at this point. And if Elijah Moore went 8 for 8, he would get his batting average up to 311, which wouldn't be quite enough to get to Robbie Carrillo. So I think that we'll let them each at least play in this second to last game of the year, see what happens there and whether there's any decisions to be made. Carrillo's still at 312 at this point. Elijah Moore has dipped down to 300, so there's no way that he's going to get past him at this point. I guess my question is, I don't feel like I have to be incredibly careful with Elijah Moore, given that he's an Iron Man in terms of his injury proneness. But I also don't want to say that on the final day of the season and then have him end up getting injured before the playoffs. Being probably a little bit of a scaredy cat at this point, because I just feel this team, every decision we've made this year has been to getting this team ready for the playoffs. And I just want to make sure that we are as healthy as possible. Alvarado is actually set to go today. We did lose him, if you remember, for the playoffs last year with a late season injury. Given that we're going to have enough time off and Loera is going to be going in our first game, obviously, I think I'm still going to let Alvarado pitch, but going to put him on a relatively conservative 70 pitch count. And we've already, as I think I talked about a few episodes back, we've already got all of our starters on aggressive tiredness hooks to hopefully help them maintain their health and well-being as we get closer to the playoffs. I think it's unlikely that Montero is going to pass Carrillo for the batting title. He is also an Iron Man, like Elijah Moore, part of the reason that I brought both of those guys over a couple of years ago, and they've been great for us since we brought them on board. So I really don't feel like I need to be too conservative with anybody, although there's really nothing to be gained by playing those guys. I think the risk of either of them having a major injury is pretty low. Famous last words, I know, but we will finish up the season today and hopefully not have any players in that dreaded orange or red coloring when we take a look at our roster. And it doesn't seem that there's any injuries, but we'll check in quickly just to ensure that is the case. And yeah, it looks like Latrell Young, who's down to 1 day with his injury, is the only player who's banged up. So went in with another win. So the Rockies are preparing for the playoffs, possibly playing some of our best baseball of the year with 6 wins in our final 7 games against San Diego, the White Sox, and the Dodgers, who are all teams that unless something significant has happened, are all headed to the playoffs. Yep, they're all headed to the playoffs. So 104-58 for the Rockies this year. Ended up with the best record in baseball. Carrillo got a batting title. Elijah Moore led the league in homers and ribbies and OPS ahead of free agency. Carrillo third in batter war. Elijah Moore with that 33-game hitting streak. You may remember that Elijah Moore had a 9-game home run streak near the end of the season last year, so he's put up some pretty impressive streaks for us. Loera ends up tied with two others for the league lead in wins, leads the league in strikeouts, leads the league in pitcher war. As I talked about earlier, would think that he's going to be a pretty competitive candidate for winning a Cy Young Award, which I believe would be his 11th. Alvarado only went 3 1/3 innings, 72 pitches to get to 3 1/3. He did allow 3 hits, walk, a couple, strikeout 4. Pretty high pitch count to get to just 3 1/3 innings, but he came out healthy, and we've got the team set up the way that we would hope. We've got the best record in baseball. We've got a bye now for the first round of the playoffs. We've got home field advantage for as long as we're going to be playing, and the team is completely healthy. So everything is set up as well as it possibly can be for the Rockies to hopefully complete our quest of winning a World Series this season. And we will find out how we do in that quest in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.